Welcome to the Getting Started with Homeschooling with Homeschool Idaho. I'm here with my friend Audra Talley again, and we are on session 4, the second part of session 4. Go back and listen to the first part where we are discussing learning styles and teaching styles. And Audra really went into depth last time, so go back and listen there. But today we're going to touch on those things again. We're going to talk a little bit more about learning styles of your student, teaching styles, because that matters. It actually matters why we as parents have actual teaching styles, and learning modalities. So before we dive in, Audra, welcome. And will you let us know a little bit why this is important for new homeschool moms and veteran homeschool moms to understand how this helps us in our day-to-day homeschool journey?
Well, I know last session was probably a lot of data and very overwhelming, right?
Yes,
and
but
so
it was good.
Important, but it's a lot of information to absorb.
Yes.
And it's hard to absorb without knowing why it's important.
Right.
And so there's a couple reasons why. Understanding how your child learns means that you're going to be able to take and choose curriculum that fits their learning styles.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to be able to teach to their strengths and to support their weaknesses in terms of their learning styles. But don't let this make you feel trapped into, this means I must buy a different curriculum for each child, or I must buy certain curriculum. Because I know there's some parents out there that are going to be teaching off of hand-me-down curriculum, right?
Right.
Sometimes life doesn't give you the option.
Right.
But what this does is if you're taking a curriculum that fits your concrete sequential, that's a very kind of classroom rigid oriented curriculum, and you have a concrete random, and might struggle with that, but knowing that learning style is what's unique to that child allows you to adapt whatever curriculum you can use to fit that child. So don't feel like you have to get the exact right curriculum to fit that every single child.
Right.
I mean,
so
it's awesome if you can.
Yeah, and curriculums are you can tweak it to each kid, and that's the freedom with homeschooling, is you can take what worked for one kid and you can tweak it to work for another kid. And I think another important thing about this is sometimes we think maybe one child is doing it right and one child is doing it wrong. And to learn about learning styles, we see that God designed each child unique and on purpose, different from the next one.
Exactly.
And so we have the ability to teach to that child in the way that they learn best. And this is especially, like you mentioned in the last session, this is especially important during those early years, those elementary years. And we can discuss later why in the high school years, kids are going to have to kind of figure out how to learn a way that might be outside of how they naturally function. But in those early years, it's important to hit this. It's going to help moms not to be banging their head against a wall, getting frustrated, battling the kid. It's just going to make everything flow better if you can understand your kid. So, so that's really important. So can you do a quick recap of what those learning styles are? And I know you were going to touch on kind of an easier way for us to understand what those are.
Okay, so let's go back to Tobias really quick. We had our concrete sequential. Those are the very rigid, structured kids. They like everything in a certain order.
Right.
You have abstract sequentials who still like things in an order, but they can grasp and understand kind of disconnected concepts.
Right.
Your abstract randoms, again, still deal well with abstract concepts, but they don't sequence it the same way in the way they retain and understand information.
Okay.
So that it can feel random, just like the name says.
Right.
And then your concrete randoms like dealing in reality. But again, how they process that is kind of random. Where in their brain it gets stored and how they store it can be seem disjointed to a concrete sequential personality.
Okay.
So that's just a really rough overview. We're going to move into a different way of viewing basically the same personality types, but using different language that might help you.
Okay.
As a parent, they're a little bit more descriptive terms,
right.
They're less scientific. And I'm pulling this information from this book right here, Kathy Duffy, her 100 Top Picks for Homeschool Curriculum. And now this is called 102. This is an older version of it, but this is where I'm getting this information from.
Gotcha.
So
that's an excellent book. I would highly suggest any of these new to homeschooling parents That's a must-have for the bookshelf, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an amazing resource to begin with for both understanding your children's learning style and your teaching style, but also for choosing curriculum, or at least getting a feel for the types of curriculum that suit each learning style.
Absolutely.
So her way of, she has a name for these different personalities or learning styles. So for concrete random, she calls them the Wiggly Willies. I mean, that you can't get much more descriptive. These are the hands-on kids. They can't sit still. They have really short attention spans. They aren't really into the deep dive thinking. If they have to sit still, now they're very creative and they'll dive deep in a very tactile way. But if you're expecting them to have long, deep conversations while sitting still, probably not going to happen.
Right.
They need short-term goals and immediate rewards. They need to know that they're doing the right thing the right way right away.
Right.
And those are the kids, because of their wiggly, they are going to be sometimes disruptive in this space because they got to be moving.
Right. These kids don't tend to do well in a public school setting because they don't fit in that box. But we have to remember, and what has always frustrated me is in a public school, these kids are seen as disruptive. But again, this is who they are. This is how they're made. And it doesn't mean they're not learning. They're learning just as much as your concrete sequential. They're just doing it in their own way. So these kids are learning. They aren't disruptive. They're just they're seen that way if you try to put them in a group and tell them to sit down. These kids thrive in a homeschool setting because we can accommodate all of who they are around them.
Right. This is the kid you send out to the trampoline to do their math facts.
Absolutely.
I mean, and you have that option. So that's the awesome part of homeschooling.
So cool.
So Kathy Duffy also goes now our perfect Paulas. So imagine, that's also a really good creative way of viewing that. And those are your concrete sequentials. So they're very ordered. They're perfect. They like things to be done correctly. They have a really narrow comfort zone. Those are the kids that you probably could sit at a desk and say, here, do A, B, C, and D. And they're going to do A, B, C, and D.
Yes.
They need order. They don't do well with creative activities. They need specific guidelines. And they struggle to be part of a group because groups are a little bit random and crazy.
Right.
So again, that's not the kid that you're going to take outside and do, okay, let's do a nature study and we're going to draw a picture of this flower or this bug. They're going to be looking at you like you've lost your mind because they need something more concrete.
Absolutely. This tends to be, not always, but oftentimes firstborns can be the perfect Paula. So it's so interesting as we see a perfect Paula and then we put them next to the Wiggling Willie. So often we think one is right and one is wrong. And I'm just reiterating again, they're both exactly the way God made them. We just have to tweak the way we teach them to teach them the best way that we can.
Well, and the amazing part is that you do not have to flip your curriculum on its head to make it work for both.
Correct.
It takes just a little, it's literally just little tiny tweaks here and there. I mean, that perfect Paula might be the one you set down with, speaking of nature journaling, a nature book, and they copy or duplicate the picture in the book instead of trying to draw it from nature. So again, it's not a huge tweak. You've just got to think about it a little bit.
That's wonderful advice.
Yeah. So our next one is competent Carls. Those are the abstract sequentials. So again, they like order, but they can deal with abstract concepts. So they like to be in control. They are problem solvers. They aren't really good socially because they are just so analytical about everything. They don't relate well to their peers. They enjoy being alone and doing activities, investigating things. They are great with independent long-term projects. Yes. They like doing stuff on their own. And they are the type that have to tell you what they just learned. Those are the ones that will start talking about something that has tweaked their interest, piqued their interest, and they're just going to jabber on and on and on and on about it.
Right.
And so you might have to schedule a few extra minutes to have a conversation with this child because they're going to tell you what they've learned. And it's awesome because
yeah, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that tendency, that need to explain what they've learned is fantastic because that's amazing feedback to you as a parent going, oh yeah, they did comprehend that.
For sure, for sure. And the competent Carl likes to kind of figure things out on their own. And then as a homeschool mom, what you can do is then have them teach that because they want to express what they learned. Have them teach that to another sibling. And that's what we can do in the homeschool setting is if I don't have time to listen to the competent Carl go on for hours about what he learned, I can have competent Carl figure out what he's doing because he loves to do that. He likes to figure that out on his own independently, and then have him go teach it to his sibling. And I've just killed two birds with one stone. I've worked across the ages, I've worked across the grades, and I've taken some things off my plate. And in the end, competent Carl feels like he has been successful.
Exactly. And that's so just one more example of what's so awesome about homeschooling, right?
Yes, for sure.
So our last one is our sociable Sue, is what Kathy Duffy calls our sociable Sues. Those are the abstract randoms. Those are the feelers. They're interested in people's ideas and values. They like big picture thinking. They're not real good with facts and dates. They don't care about the details, but they want to understand people. Those are the ones that are, once kind of that learning curve has peaked, they're going to get bored really fast. Okay. So those are the ones that you're going to have to kind of keep things rolling for them. They love and thrive off of relationships. So again, these are probably those kiddos that are going to want to have mommy sitting next to them while they're learning something. And they don't do well with criticism or competition. So these are the kids that, again, they just need lots of affirmation. They need lots of touch. They need lots of encouragement.
Wonderful. So now take these Wiggly Willy, Perfect Paula, these things. And so I have children that are like this. Some of us have one of each. Some of them has several of the same. But now I take that in my home and I say, wait a minute, now I'm also one of those. So that's what's really interesting. If you're a Perfect Paula mom and you have a Wiggly Willy child, you're going to really have to relate differently to that child than you would, say, a competent Carl. So can you kind of dissect what this looks like as far as me, the mom, and the teacher towards these children?
Exactly. So that's that missing piece that a lot of us as homeschool parents, we can see our children's learning styles.
Right.
And we can think we understand them, but what we don't realize is some of maybe the difficulty we're having in our homeschool is because of our own learning styles.
Right.
And how it translates as teaching styles. So let's say like a Wiggly Willy teacher. Okay. The biggest struggle we're going to have is staying organized and following through. This homeschool planner personality doesn't work for a Wiggly Willy with a planner. I mean, we would rather play with our kids than actually get down to the nitty gritty of doing math. We tend to be impulsive. We're the kind that gets sidetracked fairly easily with, a play date. Oh, that'd be fun. And I'm sure we can fit some learning in on the side while we go, right? So we easily get bored with the day in and day out routines. We look for creative solutions, but we're not terribly good at implementing creative solutions. We don't do paperwork. We don't like paperwork. We like activities over actual book work. So our mentality is very activity oriented, which has great value for our kids, but it can become a crutch or a struggle if we're relating to a Perfect Paula or a competent Carl.
Right. And you hit on something really important is often we think, okay, this has great benefit to homeschooling, but many people think unless you are a Perfect Paula teacher, you can't homeschool. You're not equipped to do this. You need to be. And that is a complete misconception. Wiggly Willy moms can 100% homeschool just as well as the Perfect Paulas. You just have to identify your strengths, your weaknesses, how you teach, how your kids learn, and then you work that together. So do not let that misconception of you have to be a Perfect Paula to be a perfect homeschool mom. That's not true at all. That's not true. You just have to learn how God made you and how that's going to work with teaching your kids. So a Wiggly Willy can absolutely be a very successful homeschool mom.
Absolutely. They're life givers. They instill a lot of energy, and it's just a matter of directing
and make it fun and exciting.
Yeah. And another one of our personalities we talked about was Perfect Paulas. And as a parent teacher, Perfect Paulas are the ones that will plan ahead. They follow a schedule. They are not terribly creative, so they are okay being guided by curriculum, and they tend to want to stick to what the curriculum says they need to be doing. Comfortable with memorization and drill. They are not. They have a hard time handling kids that are uncooperative because they expect a certain way of doing things, and it's really hard for them to get outside of their mind, their own brains, and look at what's going on around them, because
For sure.
It's easy for me to sit down and do it. Why isn't it easy for them? They are stressors. They stress about meeting minimum requirements, or what they perceive are their minimum requirements for teaching. They prefer, oftentimes they do better under an umbrella program, or like an Abeka Academy type situation where everything is provided. Somebody else grades the paper. You just make sure that everything's done, and then you send it off to somebody else to, evaluate what the finished work. And they prefer cut and dry. These are the ones that are going to excel with language and math, but maybe science and art might be a struggle for a Perfect Paula.
Right. And, one of the weaknesses with Perfect Paula is Perfect Paula can tend to be controlled by the curriculum. The curriculum can rule her homeschool rather than allow the curriculum to be used as a tool. So that's something that Perfect Paulas have to watch for. And before we go on to the next two, I want to interject with, because those two are so very opposite. The wonderful thing that we have as homeschool moms is we have other moms that we can use as resources. So I tend to be more on the side of the Perfect Paula. And so when it comes to wild and crazy, messy science projects, I shut down. It gives me anxiety. But I have kids that need that. So I can find my Wiggly Willy best friend, homeschool mom, and she can do all those crazy wild science experiments with the kids. And then I can maybe do, a writing assignment, and so we can use one another as resources. We do not have to do everything. Just because we are homeschooling does not mean that I have to be Wiggly Willy, Perfect Paula, competent Carl. I do not need to be all things to all of my kids. I can use the resources of my friends and my co-op and the homeschool community. So so know that, moms that are just starting this out, as you're looking at this, do not think that this all falls on you. There's incredible resources in community. So with that,
I was just going to add to that, the co-op setting does provide some of those opportunities, but don't get stuck in the idea that it has to be a co-op. It could just be one other mom
coming over for the
houses
afternoon.
Down.
Absolutely.
Yes. I've done that.
And sometimes that works. That works. I mean, that can be more beneficial at times when it's just grab a mom and say, hey, and those Wiggly Willy moms will thrive on you asking them to do that. They will, it's a beautiful kind of a sisterhood that we have in the homeschool community to do it together. So with that, tell us about the competent Carl or competent Carla as a homeschool mom.
Right. So a competent Carl personality as a homeschool mom is going to be the one who's going to run the co-op. They like to be in control. They think and act very logically. They like to understand the reasoning behind stuff. They can be organized, but it's selectively, because that control, if they can organize it as a form of control, they will do it. If the organization doesn't yield the feeling of control that they thrive off of, then that just kind of goes by the wayside. Competent Carls like to work alone, so they're very organized, but they like doing it by themselves. They don't like dealing with the chaos of other people engaging in their worlds. And it's not that you're antisocial. It's just this is your ideal way of being. And they tend to be a little bit impatient with other people who are a little bit disorganized and chaotic. They're not really good at grasping other people's feelings. They don't like dealing with difficult social situations. And they like long-term plans. Those are the kind that are going to have a vision from kindergarten through high school, and they're going to have it all written down in the first 3 weeks. Type of personality. So they do really good. Those are the parents that you're going to cue in for teaching math to your kid when you start struggling. Those are the ones that have really good, precise understanding of very concrete subjects.
They're also going to find frustration with their children when they don't stay on task, when they're not organized. So those moms need to be very intentional to understand that their children are not all like them. Not all their kids are going to
Right.
be these competent Carls, and that's okay. It's not wrong, it's just different. So,
It's
but
just
that's
different.
sometimes hard for the competent Carls to understand, and they can get frustrated. So,
Mhm.
don't get frustrated. Just keep your eyes on, this is how God made this child, and he gave this child to
Yes.
me. So he's going to give me what I need to teach this child.
Exactly, exactly. And then our last one is the sociable Sue personality. These are the gals that enjoy lots of social interaction. We're play date people. We like to belong in groups. The co-ops. We tend to worry about what other people think. So we're also going to be the trying to keep up with the Joneses homeschool
Mm.
parent. And that's probably the biggest trap for the sociable Sues, is that you're going to see something that some other parent is going to do, and you're going to be going, oh, I should do that. That looks like a great
Um,
idea. Oh, I want to do that. And you're going to be all over the place trying to keep up with everybody else. And you're gonna start feeling just at loose ends. But they're very idealistic. And so they set high goals and have high expectations of how things are going to be. If they are part of a group and there's somebody they could be accountable to, they're actually pretty organized, right? Because they want to live up to other people's expectations of them. And they tend to these are also personalities that do really good with language arts, with the kind of creative feeling type subjects. So I know a lot of parents struggle with writing, teaching
right.
writing to their children. So this personality might be a good resource for you as a parent to teach your children, writing, creative writing, art, social studies, those subjects. So that's your sociable Sue. And while her weakness is comparison,
Right.
her strength is she's probably going to be the one that's like, yeah, let's go do this together. Let's go do
Yep.
this
She can
together. And
rally the troops.
exactly,
Right.
exactly. So she
Right.
has her strengths.
Yep, and
Yeah.
everybody loves to be around her. So those are the teaching and the learning styles, and every family is different because you have a different mom with a different style, and then many different kids with different styles, and that's
Hmm.
the beauty of homeschool freedom, is it looks different in every home, but good, and it's a good different. It's not that one is
Right.
better than the other. So learn your teaching style, find out your children's learning style, and in Kathy Duffy's book there, if you are like, I don't know, most moms can figure it out, but there are actually tests that will help you
Right.
discover, and then Kathy Duffy will match those things and help you find a curriculum. So we have just a few minutes left for this session, but I want to just quickly touch on the learning modalities, because we have all these learning styles, but then on
Hmm.
top of that, there's ways that kids also learn within those. So can
Right.
you hit on
Right.
those very quickly?
Those are super simple. We already have heard them probably in language everywhere else. We
Right.
have our visual learners. So
Right.
those are the kids that need to see to understand, and they're going to need color matters, pictures matter,
Right.
script, the way the letters are written on the page is going to matter to their comprehension.
Right.
You have auditory learners. These are the kids that they can be coloring down here. And as long as they can hear what you're saying, they're going to take information
Right.
in. Those are the kids that you probably want to have a lot of inflection in your voice and excitement in your voice. And you want to stay engaged with them verbally in order to help them learn. And then your kinesthetic
Mhm.
learners. Your kinesthetics are touch. These are the kids
Yep.
that need to have their hands in everything in order to learn well, which for writing, that might be a little challenging, but for science they're going to be all about it. So
Right. Right.
that you can have that learning modality within any learning style.
Right.
So this is kind of an overarching, and to go back to those learning styles, recognize that your children aren't going to be 100% one of those styles, just like you won't be. They will be probably predominantly one style, but just keep that in mind, that it's not that these aren't boxes to put our kids in.
Right.
They're
Right.
tools to understanding the best way to teach our children.
Absolutely. And this is so exciting because I mean, we are the best ones to be teaching our kids because we know them
Yeah.
the best. And it is
Yep.
so fun to learn and discover your child and their learning styles, and if they're, visual or auditory or kinesthetic. It is a blessing and a joy to get to know our
Yes.
kids and be able to teach them the way that God made them. So don't be discouraged. And it takes time too. Don't get
Yeah.
discouraged. It takes time. It takes trial and error. And once you have it figured out, it may change a bit. And we can just
It may.
constantly tweak things to work what's best for our families. So, um,
Exactly.
the beauty of homeschool is we don't fit in a box, and we don't need to fit in
Yeah.
a box, because it's so much bigger, and learning can take place in such a bigger arena. So get
Yeah.
excited, grab the Kathy Duffy book if you need, shoot over questions. We can help guide you
Yeah.
through this. If you've missed our past sessions, all sessions are on YouTube. So if you're just getting started in homeschooling, or if you know somebody that is, go back and listen to our sessions, and stay tuned, as we're going to have 6 more. And by the end of this whole thing, you should be well equipped to do what we already believe you are equipped to do. We're just giving you some tools to do it. So thanks for joining us, Audra. Thank you. And we can't wait to share more with you all. So we'll see you back here.
All right, we'll see ya.